in the meantime, I mean, you know, the idea of trying to create diversity is something that all organisations quite rightly have to think about, but it's obvious to everybody. There's only one woman on the panel, you're all white. Why is it important to the Bank of England, and what difference would it actually make if you did start bringing in people from different backgrounds, different, you know, different educational backgrounds, working class people, what, you know, whatever terms you want to use that means diverse?
Well, I'll start and colleagues can supplement. I think it makes a huge difference, and I referenced a bit of that in a moment ago, which is you get people with different perspectives, obviously different skill sets, but also looking at a problem, seeing different angles to it and different potential solutions. That's the first point I'd make. Christine Lagarde, I'll give an example of this, which when she went to run the IMF, yeah. So the woman who runs the IMF, she used to be the finance minister of France. I think many people will know her. And when she went to the IMF, she said, you know, it's great. It's an international organization. There's great diversity, people from all over the world, and it's almost a quota system for who they have there. But she said, you know, they all went to one university, MIT, and got a PhD in economics. So on one level, they're culturally diverse, but on another level, intellectually, they were very monoculture, and that led to blind spots. So she changed a lot of the disciplines that they recruit in. So you need both. That's why we have, you know, a huge chunk of economists, but not all economists. It's also why we need people from across this country, different backgrounds. The odd foreigner, from time to time, we actually have 40 nationalities at the Bank of England, and 40 plus nationalities, I should say. The last point is that it's, of course, not just enough to have diversity, but you have to choose inclusion at the same time. So you have to have processes for making decisions and the way you work that allow people or encourage people to express those different views and take advantage of them. So if you're very hierarchical, you know, the diversity is only in the photograph, really. You don't see it. But if it's shared decision making and there's challenge and people are comfortable doing that, that helps. And part of what we're trying to change is that culture, and by making the bank more open and pushing people out to the broader public, it helps us in that regard too.
Dave, I mean, is it a challenge then to not make it look like a really exclusive club?
I think it is. For any institution, you have to keep challenging yourself to make sure that you are being as diverse as you can be. And as Mark was just saying, that you're also being inclusive with that diversity. It's not just a badge you're wearing, but actually it's affecting your culture. And I mean, we've talked quite a lot today about what the bank does in terms of its mission on monetary and financial stability. But also if you think about, as Mark was just saying, how we carry out our mission, starting with the policy committees. You know, we have the Monetary Policy Committee that is all about trying to meet the inflation target. That has 9 people on it, independent, diverse, independent in their votes, diverse in their approaches. So some of us are on that committee, but we have academics on that. We have people with more of a business background. On financial stability, we have a committee with, as well, again, some of us on it, people with really deep financial expertise, people who lived through the financial crisis, whether in charge of banks or who know about insurance companies. And then the culture that we operate within the bank, where we do try and open up those committees to challenge from the staff, so that people feel that they, not like the groupthink that clearly did characterize the world of economics in the run-up to the global financial crisis. You know, this is not any particular institution. There was just a way of thinking of the world. We encourage people to think differently now. We have an amazing Bank Underground blog where we positively encourage people to come out with countercultural ideas. Then what's really important, though, is that we do carry on with challenging ourselves to be appropriately diverse. It's been hinted at a few times today, but economics does have a gender issue. I mean, when you go back...
Can I give you some stats on this? Because we've got some...
Well, I could...
You know them.
Well, I know them,
yes.
but I also know... I mean, I know what... You could see it from the very first film that you gave. I think there was one woman who spoke out of the group of about about 5 or 6 speakers.
Well, there are it says here female students account for 57% of all undergraduate students in the UK, but only 27% of economics students actually.
And it's worth, sorry.
In the last decade have been women. Let me just finish this bit because it says 60% of girls, this is about the lack of female role models, 60% of girls said they would feel more confident in pursuing a STEM career, or you might transfer that into an economics career, because that's what we're talking about, if they knew that men and women were employed equally in that area. So that's a perception, isn't it? And also, 12.5% of the UK population are from black or ethnic minority backgrounds, but only 6% across the board hold management jobs. That is a huge problem. Joe, I mean, obviously, you will have a view on this. This has got to be fundamentally something that changes within the bank, hasn't it?
Well, absolutely. And we have made a lot of progress over the last 3 years, but we're not complacent. We must challenge ourselves, and there's a lot more to do. And what we mustn't do is just say, we'll wait for everybody to apply, and then we'll make some brave decisions and make sure from that pool that we choose diversity. Because the problem is we won't get diversity in that pool. So we have to do a lot of things at recruitment, how we sell ourselves, even down to gender-neutral language, if we're talking about genders, in our recruitment ads. But the other thing we've done for our graduates, and Mark mentioned that we've got 50% who have done economics and 50% who haven't. A lot of people think, oh, I need economics to get to the Bank of England, or I need maths. Actually, we've introduced a central bank qualification, which means that every graduate that joins us goes on a programme where we teach people central banking. So you can do lots and lots of degrees in this country, but you can't do a degree in central banking. But we've essentially introduced that. We've teamed up with Warwick Business School. And that means that we get all sorts of disciplines applying to us. So we don't have to just pick this discipline or that discipline. We certainly don't favour any disciplines because we give them that training. But there has to be a number of initiatives, and I've just mentioned 2, a number of initiatives from recruitment right through from our promotions to our inclusive culture, etc., which means that not only do we get people in the door, but actually, in terms of the pipeline coming up, we get more people.
It'd be nice to get some questions out. There's teachers, lots of people here who deal with young people, and why you think that there is such a huge disparity. There's a lady there in the middle. If you could get a microphone over quickly. If there's anybody else, please put your hands up now. There's somebody else at the back there. And because I think that's the key, isn't it? Is that, and there's a young person here. If we could get a microphone there, good. So if we get the microphones all around, put your hand right high up so we can get to you. That's it. Okay, off we go.
Hello, you're right. I'm Victoria, and I'm from a national charity called Uprising. And what we do is we work to break down, I'd call it quite unfair, the unfair cycle of unrepresentative leadership in the UK. So decision makers across all sectors, for the most part in key roles and key professions in the UK, it's not very diverse. So we prefer to use the term underrepresentative. And we talked earlier about mistrust coming from a misunderstanding or a non-understanding of institutions. We at Uprising think that a lot of that mistrust and misunderstanding comes from unrepresentative leadership, and that power and decision-making not necessarily reflecting the communities that they serve.
Do you have a question? Because we've got 5
Yes,
minutes.
I have a question. It was more of a statement that I was going to make about tackling the root cause of unrepresentative leadership in economics from the very beginning. So from education and from university training. What are the most important steps that you're taking to tackle that unrepresentation?
I'll take it.
Yes. A sort of brevity at this point.
Brevity at this
just
point.
So we've got another breakout session in 5 minutes, but yes, important.
First off, absolutely agree. People tend to trust organizations that look like the societies they serve, and that's one of the express objectives of the bank, to become more representative. How are we doing that? Let me tell you one thing, 2 things. First, external recruiting. We've recruited 700 people, experienced hires in the last 2 years. 50% of them have been women, 25% have been BAME. And we've done that in order to help move us up. We have explicit targets in both areas for senior management throughout the bank, and we report on those annually, and you can track our progress. You have to work at it. But we, having looked at this and worked hard to move this, what we recognize, apart from the economic education, the decision-making education required, is we need to encourage a much broader range of students at a young age to realize, A, that they can do this, B, that there's opportunities out there, and C, that their schools and their universities are going to give them the tools in order to pursue these careers.
You don't have to
And
go
so
to a
that's what this
specific
is
type
about.
of university
Yeah, exactly.
to get
And
in.
you don't have to go to a
The
specific
club
one.
mentality doesn't start at university level.
Yeah.
That's key. We've got another question there, and there's a chap here with his hand up for ages. Could we get the other mic here whilst this person's asking a question? Thank you.
Hello again, I'm Riddhi and I'm the Diversity Officer of University of Manchester Students' Union. So it's very interesting to see the different diversity and inclusion policies followed by the Bank of England. And you spoke about inclusion and diversity at various levels starting from recruitment. My question to you is, and as far as I know, as an economics graduate myself, one of the things that turned me down from applying is the numerical psychometric test because of, not many of my female friends as well do not like maths. So do you think making numerical psychometric tests compulsory as a part of the recruitment process sometimes turns women from, getting into these jobs in banking?
So maybe I'll take that. I mean, we look at our tests each year and we look to see whether they've got any sort of bias on either gender or indeed any other groups. So in terms of the specific question as to whether the numerical test has any bias, I would say to you, we don't think it has got any bias because we've tested all of the our recruitment tests against that. I mean, I can have another look at that if you think there is any bias in it. It's a very specific question. I think my answer just in general is we take this so seriously. We look at all our tests each year, we benchmark them, and we look for any bias. And we have taken tests out or amended them if we think there's been any bias, either way, I should say, not just towards female.
Maybe you could have a conversation afterwards, actually.
Yeah,
That would
absolutely.
be quite interesting.
Yeah.
Question here from the young man.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Richard. I'm a student from University Central Lancashire.
Come on. Sorry.
Yeah.
My own personal
And,
bias there is totally allowed.
And I'm a student with an invisible disability, autism. And I found it interesting that I didn't see much of any on disabilities in the workplace, talk about diversity. I guess my point is that, similar to the lady who just spoke, I've had friends who were absolutely fantastic at economics, run circles around me all the time, but they're dyslexic, and things like psychometrics tests just go completely screw their brain. And I guess I'm saying to you guys and to everyone else in the room is kind of, okay, we may struggle on that initial bit, but with the right support, all you have to do is look at the, industry leaders with disabilities, such, with dyslexia example, Richard Branson. He's doing all right for himself.
Very good point.
there you
Thank
go.
you. Great question.
So just say just two sentences on that. We have a very strong disability network where we really encourage people to disclose their disabilities. So one of our most senior heads of division is dyslexic. We also have a number of people with autism. We encourage people, if they've got mental health issues, that they also declare that as a disability as well. And we will give them whatever support that they need in order that we can, as I say, have not only a diverse workforce, but an inclusive one as well.
It's interesting, isn't it? You would only know that if you were inside already.
Probably,
and I suppose
but
the
it's a
point
really
of this
important
session
point
is
to keep
how do you
making.
get the message out there that all are welcome. Interestingly, though, one question here which I thought was interesting from the hall, which actually says, why should the Bank of England be diverse? Shouldn't the most qualified, most capable applicant be employed, whether this results in 80% female workforce or 60% male workforce, wherever the cards land, shouldn't that just be the best people available?
Well, no, is the short answer. If you get monoculture, there are rankings of education programs, in economics, so there'll be a global ranking. And if we hired the top, we hire 90 people postgraduate each year. And if we hired the top 90 from, it's either Harvard or MIT at present globally, we would not end up with the mix of people that would make the best decisions. And that is the point. If you know, just getting one type of individual, one form of education, one set of backgrounds, one set of perspectives, however brilliant, does not lead to the best forms of decision. And the entire institutional structure of the Bank of England, learned through painful processes, is that we make decisions by committee. Those committees are diverse. We work to get those people, and they should be more diverse, but you know, we go some, anyways, that's another story. But the people underneath, we build out that diversity in order to have that challenge, different perspective, complementary skills, and talent.
And if
so
people
it
switch
doesn't
off
follow.
from listening to what you're saying because they feel that you don't represent them, you don't speak the same way as them, then there becomes a knowledge gap, and then who fills that vacuum?
And then you have,
and then you get the issues.
Rand,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. And it was to the woman from Uprising. That goes to that. Then there's that consequence as well, is you're not trusted, you're not as effective in delivering whatever brilliant decision
And you're
you
not
have
trusted.
made.
It comes back to the very first point we had about trust. Any more points on this before we do the breakout session?
Just want to make one point. It's important to remember what we do. Okay, so the economy is 65 million people, hundreds, thousands of companies, all interacting, and then the global economy as well. And you can't understand that perfectly. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to work ahead of ourselves, because the policies like monetary policy work with a lag of 18 months, 2 years. So if you get a group of people who all think the economy works the same way,
And it
we
works
have
for
to
them.
try and tell stories about why does the economy work this way, what's happening. If they all think the economy works the same way, then they'll all make the same decision. And how you think things work depends a lot on your background, what you've studied,
Yeah.
sort of what cultural background you have. And
Who your
that
friends are, who you
diversity-
mix with, all of those things affect us, whether we like it or not. We take it all in the door when we go
It all
in.
goes into
Absolutely.
it. So that diversity gives us protection. So when the Queen asked the Royal Economic Society, well, why did no one see the crisis coming? You know, and nobody did see the crisis coming. I think it's part of that question goes to diversity of thought.
But it's the same, you know, same in general. Why was everybody surprised by Brexit? Because we were talking to each other and not necessarily talking out. And we weren't going to Fleetwood and we weren't going to Boston. We weren't, you know what I mean? And there's a truth in that for, I think, lots of organisations to learn from that. Should we leave that there and then should we go to our breakout session? I think it's probably about time for that. Let's get brilliant Joe back up, who's going to explain the next few sort of 10, 15, 20 minutes, I think. We're going to do a 10-minute breakout session.